In 1692, a small village in colonial Massachusetts became the center of one of the strangest and most terrifying episodes in American history. Neighbors turned against neighbors, children accused adults, and courts sentenced people to death for a crime that no one could prove even existed. Within just a few months, over 200 people were accused of witchcraft and 20 innocent people were executed. But the biggest mystery remains. How did an entire community become convinced that witches were living among them? This is the real story of the Salem witch trials. To understand how the Salem witch trials happened, we need to understand the world people lived in during the late 1600s. Salem was a small Puritan settlement in colonial Massachusetts. Puritans were extremely religious Protestants who believed their society should strictly follow God's laws. They believed the world was a constant battle between good and evil, between God and the devil. To them, the devil was not just a symbol of evil. They believed he was actively working in the world, trying to corrupt people and destroy their communities. And witches, according to Puritan belief, were people who had made a pact with the devil. These witches were believed to cause illness, storms, crop failures, and even death. Because of these beliefs, fear of witchcraft was very real. Across Europe and colonial America, thousands of people had already been executed for witchcraft. But Salem would soon experience one of the most famous witch hunts in history. The Salem witch trials began in January 1692 in the home of Reverend Samuel Parris. Two young girls began behaving very strangely. One was Betty Parris, the minister's 9-year-old daughter. The other was Abigail Williams, his 11-year-old niece. The girls screamed uncontrollably. They threw objects across the room. They crawled under furniture and twisted their bodies into strange positions. Sometimes they claimed they were being bitten or pinched by invisible forces. Their behavior terrified the adults around them. Doctors examined the girls but could not find any physical illness. Eventually, one doctor made a shocking claim. He said the girls were under the influence of witchcraft. In a deeply religious community already afraid of the devil, this explanation quickly spread fear throughout the village. Soon the girls began accusing people in the village of being witches. The first 3 people accused were Tituba, Sarah Good, and Sarah Osborne. Tituba was an enslaved woman from the Caribbean who lived in Reverend Parris's household. Sarah Good was a poor homeless beggar who often asked neighbors for food. Sarah Osborne was an elderly woman who rarely attended church and was disliked by many villagers. In other words, all 3 were outsiders in Salem society. When the women were brought before the magistrates for questioning, the courtroom was filled with frightened villagers. Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne denied the accusations, but Tituba did something unexpected. After intense questioning, she confessed to practicing witchcraft. She told the court that the devil had visited her and asked her to serve him. She even claimed she had seen other witches in Salem. This confession terrified the village. Because if Tituba was telling the truth, it meant the devil had already begun building an army inside their community. After Tituba's confession, accusations spread rapidly. More girls began claiming they were being attacked by witches. They pointed fingers at neighbors, friends, and even respected members of the community. The courts accepted a type of evidence known as spectral evidence. This meant that if someone claimed to see a person's spirit attacking them, it could be used as proof of witchcraft. Even if there was no physical evidence at all, this created a dangerous situation. Anyone could accuse someone else of witchcraft, and the accusation alone could lead to arrest. By the spring of 1692, dozens of people had been imprisoned. Men and women, young and old, even people who had once accused others soon found themselves accused. Fear and suspicion had taken over the entire village. In June 1692, the first execution took place. A woman named Bridget Bishop was found guilty of witchcraft and sentenced to death. She was taken to a hill outside the town and hanged. Over the next several months, the executions continued. In total, 19 people were hanged, but one case stood out as particularly horrifying. A farmer named Giles Corey was accused of witchcraft. Instead of pleading guilty or innocent, he refused to enter a plea. Without a plea, the court could not legally hold a trial. To force him to respond, Officials used a brutal torture method called pressing. They placed a wooden board on his chest and piled heavy stones on top of it. For 2 days, more weight was added as they demanded that he enter a plea, but Giles Corey refused. According to legend, his final words were simply, "More weight." He died without confessing. By late 1692, the accusations had spread far beyond the original victims. Even powerful members of society were being accused. At one point, accusations were made against the wife of the colony's governor. That was when the government finally began to question what was happening. Governor William Phips realized the trials were becoming dangerous and chaotic. He ordered the courts to stop accepting spectral evidence. Without that evidence, most of the accusations quickly fell apart. In October 1692, the governor officially ended the Salem witch trials. The remaining prisoners were eventually released. But by that time, the damage had already been done. After the trials ended, many people in Salem began to feel deep regret. Families had lost loved ones, neighbors had destroyed each other's lives. Years later, courts ruled that the trials had been a terrible mistake. The colony issued official apologies and provided financial compensation to the families of the victims. But for those who had been executed, justice came too late. Today, the Salem witch trials are remembered as one of the darkest chapters in American history. They show how fear, superstition, and suspicion can quickly spiral out of control. When people stop demanding evidence and start believing accusations without proof, even innocent people can become victims. In 1692, a small village believed it was fighting the devil, but in the end, the real enemy was fear itself.